Welcome to the Thriving Artist Podcast, where we share strategies and support for artists to thrive.
We know that the art world can feel like a lonely place, and we want to provide a network of support, impactful strategies, and an abundance of encouragement to help you grow your authentic art career.
We're your hosts. I'm Jamie Smith.
And I'm Kaylan Butine, and we are also the co-founders of the Thrive Together Network, a community of female and non-binary identifying artists and artists who are caregivers.
We truly believe in community over competition, and we're so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Kaylan Butine, and I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana with my partner and 3 kiddos.
I'm Jamie Smith, your other host of the podcast, and I live in Vancouver, Canada with my partner and very silly dog, Rhea, and we're soon adding a little one into the mix, so I'm very excited.
And we are excited to share this episode with you called 5 Tips to Get Inspired When You're in a Slump. Something that happens to all of us. We get in creative slumps. Maybe it happens more than you want to admit, right? We all might have different strategies and tactics for sort of getting ourselves out of these creative slumps. But we wanted to share a few today in case you happen to be in one of those and you're looking for some ways to get out of it.
We worked with so many creatives and artists, and being artists ourselves, we've definitely been there. So we put together this episode to kind of help put everything in one spot. So our first tip to get yourself out of a slump is to try a new material. So this has helped me a lot in the past. I find when you're a working artist, you can get very stuck in the fact that everything you make should mean something. It should go on Instagram. It should work with your portfolio. And that to me is very centered around my material. If I'm going to work in pen and ink, I want it to mean something. So by trying this new material, it sort of pushes me out of this comfort zone and also takes the pressure off. It's almost this release valve that says, this isn't my medium. This isn't supposed to go on my website or Instagram. This is just play and curiosity, which to me is the creative practice and will get me out of that slump. So I highly recommend trying a new material.
Absolutely. And my tip number 2 kind of piggybacks on that, because one of the ways that you can try a new material is to take a class or kind of learn from another artist, ask somebody to teach you a new technique, right? So a class or getting together with another artist who can teach you something is along the lines of what Jamie said, a way for you to play, for you to not be the expert, for you to not have your sort of big capital A artist pants on when you're actually making work. And you get to kind of get those creative juices flowing again. You get to be a student and you get to learn. I know for me, sometimes it's hard to invest in classes because, our time and money are very precious. But I think that idea of, just really investing in ourselves as people, in who we are, how we're feeling in the moment, that can really do a lot for our creative practice, and it can help us get out of a slump for sure.
I agree. I took an encaustic class a few years ago when I was just feeling I didn't have a direction with my drawing. And it helped me so much. Encaustic is such a great one because it's very hard to try wax and all those materials in your own studio, but to actually go to someone else's studio and play and practice. And it was just so freeing because I went in and I didn't know what I was doing. So I was the student instead of, feeling like I had to bring this masterpiece together. So definitely works. And tip number 3 of how to get inspired when you're in a slump is to book an artist date. So this is such a good one. We have witnessed so many creatives coming together. So every Tuesday we meet for art and tea with other artists. And I find that really helps me just feel creative. But we also get to hear through our network about artists that meet in real life sometimes or meet on Zoom. And just having that creative energy, knowing you're not alone, connecting really makes all the difference and can really build you up and kind of give you that confidence to get out of the creative slump.
I think confidence has a lot to do with this being in a creative slump. And so when you book a date with another artist, you're showing up both as artists, and that does boost your confidence, right? You're kind of getting to say, hey, you artist, and you're having those conversations back and forth about what it means to be an artist. And I think that in and of itself just builds your confidence, which can then help you move forward in and out of a slump, right?
Well, you
Um,
get to talk shop, which is
yes.
always a good thing and reminds you that, yeah, I'm here, I'm making work, and I can do this. So I agree.
Absolutely. And our tip number 4 is to set up a studio visit. This is another one that if you're part of the TTN community or if you have a lot of artist friends online, it's such an easy thing to do. But actually being a little bit professional about this and setting up a studio visit over Zoom or in person and kind of preparing for it, putting a little slideshow, a slide deck of your work, of recent work, of some questions for whomever, even if it is just an artist friend, but kind of putting on this more professional hat and saying, here's what's going on in my studio. Here's some questions I have. I find that just inviting conversation about your work can really get me out of a slump because other people, other artists, curators will see things in my work that I don't see. And that gets me really excited because it reminds me that like my work has value. People take the time to look at it and they see things. And there's all these connections that people are making that I don't even make myself, especially if I'm in a dry spell, right? So I think, our art is really meant to be seen and to get out there. And setting up a studio visit can be a good way to spark some of that creativity and again, build that confidence up again.
Very similar to this last point, this last tip is to get yourself out of a creative slump is to use a deadline. So this could be a studio visit or an artist date, but I find deadlines can really help kind of chunk the work that needs to be done. It kind of takes out the emotional side of what do I feel like making? What's my artistic sense today? All this
Mhm.
pressure we put on ourselves. Instead, a deadline is very clear. And it's very much like this needs to be done by this time. So it kind of gets you to work.
Mhm.
And I use an artist consult. So Penny Lane Shin of Dazed and Confucius, her team, you book in with them, and it's sort of a critique, but also helps you with your art business. They basically spend an hour or half an hour with you, either one, and you ask questions. And I always set up one for every quarter because that gives me a deadline every quarter. Because if I show up to that consultation without a plan or questions, it's kind of a waste of money. And I'm
Mhm.
very motivated by not wasting my money. So
Mhm.
I find this deadline really works for me. But this could also be, maybe an application for a show you find that you want to have new work for. This could be a show that you have coming up. Your deadline you can make work whatever works for you, but I do love having something in the books every quarter that I feel like I'm working towards. And honestly, with that, you don't have a ton of time to get into a creative slump.
Well, and speaking of time, I think being an artist parent, you probably already have pretty limited amount of time and hours in the studio. You're not gonna work for 8 hours a day, right? You've only got certain windows where you're getting in and out of there. So I think those creative deadlines definitely help fuel the flame. And it's kind of all you've got to work with. So you got to get in and get out and be less sort of attached to the outcome and kind of let some of that pressure go, which I think is good.
I really like that because I think, especially when it's kids or any caregiving or commitments, that are pulling us away from the studio, it can feel frustrating and it can feel um, unfair sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And by flipping the switch that kids or obligations kind of create these creative constraints, I think is really powerful. And sometimes limited time is actually something that really can move things along. When I have a lot of time or don't have that deadline, if there's no pressure, sometimes creativity is very hard to find. So,
Yeah.
yeah, kids.
Yeah,
Kids are in
kids,
charge.
or just tip number 5, apply a little pressure. That'll help you
Yeah.
get out of the
A little
slump,
pressure.
right?
Deadline,
So
gently.
We definitely hope that these tips have helped you or will help you in the future the next time you're in a creative slump. Maybe you need them right now. Maybe you can come back to this episode in the future. But Jamie and I, we really believe in what you're doing to live your life as an artist, and we want to be a support and a help to you. You can find more about what we do at thrivetogethernetwork.com, and our network is always available for you to join. As always, we are here for you, we are cheering you on, and we really believe in the work that you are doing as thriving artists.